أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Sometimes, though the mother tongue language is supposed to be the ideal language you should use to communicate your thoughts and your principles and values, but because of the orientation which most of us get in the result of pursuance of knowledge, it becomes a little bit challenging to try and interpret the concepts that you learned in English in Kiswahili. I therefore beg to be forgiven that I will try as much as I can to blend the two so that I can be able to hit the nail on the head in a place where I feel the English concept will make more meaning and more impact. Allow me, please, to use the English concept. And where I feel Kiswahili might do or will do justice, I will exactly do that. Brothers and sisters in Islam, it's really an honor this morning for me to be sharing this passionate subject with you. I always tell my students, if you want to know education, just look at Mujahid. Mujahid defines what education is. And therefore, never struggle to go to any textbook and don't struggle to go to Sheikh Google, but just look at Mujahid. And when you look at Mujahid, you will understand what education is all about. Ali radhiallahu anhu is quoted to have said the most complete or holistic gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give to any human being is the gift of knowledge. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves his servant, the best gift he will extend to him or her is the gift of knowledge. Again, Al-Basri rahimahullah said in one of his books that if you study with the conviction of satisfying the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to acquire that which he possesses, then you will be successful. Again, one of my favorite author, in fact, he was my professor when I was doing my PhD. He told me, you know what, Mujahid? Anyone who refuses to drink from the fountain of knowledge will always die of thirst in the desert of ignorance. So don't be lazy in learning. Because whether you like it or not, life is about learning. It is from the womb to the tomb. In the darkness of the womb of the mother and the darkness of the womb of the grave, in between is the struggle for enlightenment. So don't be lazy in learning. Because even if you refuse to learn, life will never stop teaching you. So it is better to learn voluntarily than waiting for life to teach you by force. Because when you learn voluntarily, you choose what to learn. In most cases, you learn what is useful and what is functional. But if you wait for life to teach you, normally, it teaches you in a very ruthless way. In school, we are first taught, then given an examination after we have been taught. But in life, we are first given the exam, and then we learn from that particular exam. So don't be lazy in learning. Brothers and sisters in Islam, education is a very compounding concept that many people have given it different definitions and different meanings. But I personally, to sum up the entire concept of education, I basically look at three things. That no matter what orientation you come from, no matter what perspective of life you possess, no matter what kind of socialization you obtain, at the end of the day, education is that process which provides you with knowledge, information, making you know what you didn't know before. That process which will ultimately take you from being an innocent child to being that professional who might be called a doctor, who might be called an engineer, who might be called a pilot. It is that process which ultimately provides you with that ocean of knowledge that could make you see your end in the endeavor of your living. So the number one objective of an education is to provide you knowledge, relevant knowledge, knowledge that will ultimately make you live in this world with a lot of satisfaction and leads you to the next world with a lot of completion. Education also, no matter how it is defined, at the end of the day, it is that process which will ultimately provide you with the skills of living, learning how to live. And this is something we need to understand this morning. Like any other thing which is worthy doing in life, education is that thing which ultimately establishes the cornerstone that helps you to determine the kind of life you will live in this world and in the hereafter. So those are the skills of living, the skills of understanding yourself, the skills of understanding other people, the skills of interaction, the skills of decision making, the skills of problem solving, the skills of thinking. And that is education. And ultimately, education is responsible for crafting the mindset you will have as an individual. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, it is not about abilities that we become who we become in life. We become who we become in life as a result of the attitude that makes our mindset. You are who you are because that is how you think you are. Success in life never comes as a destination. Success is that process which is built by habituation. The things you do every day ultimately makes you the person you become in your life. Ladies and gentlemen, therefore, one can therefore conclude by saying, education is a process of acculturation. I was listening to Dr. Bilal Philip last night to see if I could massage my presentation and make it better when he was talking about Islamic education. And according to him, he defined education as a process of socialization. It is that thing, it is that tool which is practically used to transfer the traditions, the cultures, the values, the moral principles from one generation to the other. And that's why the word acculturation becomes very suitable when it comes to defining education. It is that journey that ultimately provides you with the strength to become who you should be in your life, not to become somebody else. Education is not something that is actually meant to make you different from who you are. It is that thing which is supposed to strengthen who you are, promote your culture, promote your values, promote your tradition. At the end of the day, you become proud of who you are. And that is where the conflicts between Western education and Islamic education in most cases lie. Because Islam by itself is a civilization, is a way of life. And therefore, if you want to acquire that civilization, that way of life, through a tool that is alien from that civilization, then that's where you get the conflicts, which is called psychological, a conflict which is called sociological, a conflict which is called philosophical. At the end of the day, that's why, my dear brothers and sisters, majority of us suffer from dual personalities. Dual personalities in the sense that because of the compartmentalization of knowledge, by calling it secular and religious knowledge, we grow up with that socialization believing that there are certain things that are Islamic and there are certain things that are secular. And therefore there is a conflict between the way you behave when you are in the mosque and the way you behave when you are in the office. There is a conflict between the way you behave when you are in your house and the way you behave when you're out visiting somebody else who is not you, because of that dualism. My dear brothers and sisters, in the conference of 1979, which a number of Muslim educationists met to brainstorm on a very critical issue that by then was like eating the mind of every reasonable individual. And that particular thing was the crisis in the education of the Muslims. Not knowing exactly which education is most suitable for our children. Now, as parents, as families, as communities, we were put in a very strong dilemma. And the dilemma was, I want my child to become a doctor. But at the same time, I want this same child to become an alim, a scholar. I want my child to become an engineer. At the same time, I want the same child to become a hafiz. I want my child to become a pilot. But at the same time, I want this child to become a faqih. Now, where do I take this child? Where do I surrender this child to? Who will be able to make this child both a strong Muslim and at the same time this child becomes the person I want to become? My dear brothers and sisters, Islam or the Muslim educationists have pegged the philosophy and the practices of Islam in the field of education on three principles. That for education to become education, for education to become education, in the definition of Islamic philosophy of education, the education must have triple T's. Kwa Kiswahili tunasema te tatu. Te ya kwanza ni te ya ta'lim. Ta'lim is that education should provide you with the knowledge which you need for you to become functional in your life. At the end of the day, the education should provide you with the ability to live effectively in your own life, should provide you with the information that will help you become useful in your own life, useful in your society, and useful within the ummah and the global perspective. Without that T, without that te, then that education is not education. The second T is the T of tarbiyah. And no wonder in Arabic language, education is referred as tarbiyah. That means education should be able to provide you with the opportunity to move from that young individual to that character, to that personality that will be celebrated within the principles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the teaching of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That means, therefore, putting it in line with the root word that ultimately gives us the noun education, that is educare, which its root is Greek language, is the process of character building. That means, therefore, if education does not provide you, avail you with the opportunity to become a better individual as you grow, if education will not be able to move you from that animalistic mentality to the humanistic mentality, to that mentality where you become an individual who is balanced in terms of his or her personality with the two weighing scales, the scale of the taqwa and the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No wonder they say the peak of wisdom is the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the balance of following the tradition of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the tarbiyah, character building, not diploma disease, not examination, orientation, and so on and so forth, but that education which will not give you an A in terms of your cognitive development, intellectual development, but will also give you an A in terms of your affective development, in terms of your character development, in terms of your personality development. My dear brothers and sisters, no matter how knowledgeable you are, no matter how educated you are, at the end of the day, those qualifications will never be written on your forehead. Never. And you will never be able to move with a briefcase everywhere, producing your credentials to show people that you are educated. What shows you are educated is what you say, what you do, and how you maintain your personality. Open your mouth, and everybody will know what kind of a person you are. Show me your friend, and I will tell you who you are. Show me where you spend most of your time, and I will tell you exactly what kind of a character you are. At the end of the day, the software which is within us, the mind and the heart, culminates in our actions, and that is the purpose of learning, the character building. But that character building comes only when there is a balance, the tranquility between the cognitive part of you, the mind, the brain. You become what you think most of the time. What dwells in your heart, the way you feel, and what you do, the action speaks louder than words. And therefore, at the end of the day, we, all of us, we get to be known by the philosophy we keep in our minds, the things that goes through our minds, the emotions that which we harbor within our hearts, and the actions and those things that we do through the psychomotor element of us as human beings. Education needs to create a harmony between these three things: the IQ, the EQ, and the PQ. The intelligent quotients, the emotional quotients, and the physical quotient. Addition of those makes you obtain that character. That makes you and describes you as a Muslim, as someone who is learned, as someone who is educated. The third T, brothers and sisters in Islam, is the T of ta'deeb. Whether you like it or not, you might not be able to change the entire world. You can't stop sometimes people from doing what they're doing. It's very difficult to make people think like you, feel like you, and do what you want them to do. Temptations, therefore, will always be around us and around our children. They will be there. We can't lock them in our houses 24 hours, 7 days a week, 30 days a month. We can't do that. We have to let them out to go play, go learn, and go interact and socialize with other people. Now, what do we need to do to make sure that these children of ours still, even though they are subjected to one of the most influential elements of personality development, and that is the environment, they will still retain, maintain, and be proud of who they are? Muslims. Now, this is the third angle of education, that is ta'deeb. That process which ultimately will make an individual learn to say no. Learn to say no to anything that contradicts his underlying values of existence. It is that thing which will provide the empowerment of resistance, that even though I am in an institution which is not Islamic, even though I am in a university which is not Islamic, even though I am working in an environment which is not Islamic, but I am a Muslim. In every macro environment, there got to be a micro environment for you to survive the way you want to survive. Dear brothers and sisters, nurture is always stronger than nature. Though biologically we are defined by the genetical pools we obtain from our parents. That pool could be altered, could be influenced by the environmental mediation. And the environmental mediation is normally driven by the kind of education, the kind of curriculum that an individual is exposed to. So as we are struggling to make sure that our children are getting that package that will make them survive and be proud of their identity and avoid any kind of negative influence, we must focus on the ta'lim, on the tarbiyah, and on the ta'deeb. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is also very important for us to remember, though we are in the world which is globalizing very fast, we can't stop that, unfortunately. It has to continue. Whether we like it or not, we cannot live in isolation. Whether we like it or not, we might not be able to learn in isolation. Whether we like it or not, we might not work in isolation. We got to integrate with other people. Now, these scholars who met in 1979, came up with 10 objectives of Islamic education that we as parents, and remember, every parent is a primary educator of his or her child. That is one thing we cannot deny. That every parent, the father and the mother, are the first school of each and every one of us. Schooling is not equal to education. In fact, they say education begins after schooling. But before the school, there is a bigger school, and that's the home. Therefore, it is very important for understand, and that's why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is quoted to have said one of the primary obligation for every parent after selecting the right spouse and after giving the good name, the third one is to make sure you hand over your child to the right teacher, the right school, the right education, because there the continuation of what was happening at home will have to take place. It is a process of acculturation. Therefore, we have to make sure that there is a cognizance between the home where the learning begins, the school, and the environment which ultimately the child will have to live in. Now, these scholars, may God bless them, said for any education to achieve the real purpose of learning in Islam, number one, it must be built within the philosophy of knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and providing the child with an obligation of knowing the purpose of why he is in his or her existence. They say, my brothers and sisters, the purpose of living is living a purposeful life. That need to be embedded within the education curriculum, within the education system, so that our children will understand, I am learning whatever I am learning, but the reason why I am learning whatever I am learning is to get me closer to my Creator. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it categorically, I never created men and jinns except for the purpose of worshipping me. Therefore, that element of the child understanding that this education I am pursuing, and by the way, brothers and sisters, in my philosophical understanding, I always say, pursuit is better than results. What is important is that pursuit, that struggle of learning, which makes you, not the results. What makes you, what builds you, what cultivates you is that pursuit, is that struggle you go through in the process of learning. So one objective, which is number one objective, is to enable the learner, the student, to understand that I am learning not because I want a certificate and get a good job and make good money. I am learning because this is an obligation. This is an obligation on me. And this is easily seen by what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Sallu ala nabi. Ba'da أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. For those who are learned in Arabic language more than me, I believe they will agree with me. That term, if you are to define it linguistically, it's fi'lul amr. And if you are to look at it from the English perspective, it is a commanding verb. Where there is a commanding verb, it is an explanation that you have no choice. It's not a matter of choice, it's a matter of a must. Pursuant, acquisition of knowledge is not a choice for a believer, it's a must. And to kind of reinforce this, make it more clearer, elaborate it further, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is quoted to have said, "Talab al-ilman faridu ala kulli Muslim," is farad. And with the little knowledge I have on usulul fiqh, is when something is farad, when you do get thawab, and when you don't do, you get sins. The little understanding I have. And therefore, for any Muslim who is out in pursuing knowledge, in struggling to learn, in struggling to acquire one form of knowledge or another, the person is on an act of ibadah. And for the students who are here, how I wish you will take this very seriously. Why? Because in life, when you know the reason why you're doing whatever you're doing it becomes easy. When you know the reason why it's easy to fly, and you fly, and you will never be able, and no one will deny that at the end of the day, with the struggle and effort, even if it means you have to die, but ultimately, as a believer, you must touch the sky. You might reach the maximum potential of you as someone who is struggling to become the best in this world and the best in the hereafter. Brothers and sisters in Islam, the second objective, according to this conference of Muslim scholars in education, they said the second objective of education in Islam is instilling moral values and discipline. Discipline, discipline, discipline. Allow me, my dear brothers and sisters, to repeat this word vehemently. And the reason why I am repeating this word vehemently, because I have never read any book, seen any individual, of anyone who has succeeded in life without self-discipline. Unfortunately, this has become a monster in our schools. And not just in any other school, our Muslim schools. And therefore, something that must be done, something that guides the provision of knowledge without discipline. They say education without discipline, education without character formation makes you a monster. Education which has no discipline, education which does not provide you with character formation, with the right character, that education makes you a monster. So the whole idea of us learning from preschool, from kindergarten to university, is at the end of the day to acquire that ta'deeb, that discipline. Discipline is that process of doing whatever you have to do, whether you like it or not, but because that thing is fundamental for your growth and development, you got to do it. My dear brothers and sisters, sometimes we have to learn from the future to correct our present. Because yesterday is history. Very little you can do to change history. And tomorrow, in most cases, is a mystery. But today is a gift. That's why in English language it's called present tense. It's now. It is what we will do now. It is what we say now. It is where you go now. It's the book you read now. It's the goal you have now. It's the person you interact with now. That will ultimately determine how your future will be. So the future is built now, today. So for anyone who wants to make sure that our younger generation is going through this system of learning that will make their future more beautiful than our own present times, will make their future more beneficial than our present time, will make their future more meaningful than our present time, then we go to work today. We got to say what is the best, do what is the best, interact for those who are the best, for us to become truly the best. The third objective, in the interest of time, my dear brothers and sisters, is that education should enable the learner to grow in a holistical way, in a total way. You become a total individual. You don't suffer from the conflicts of personality disillusion. The mind, the heart, and the body must all be developed through learning. And that is why scholars of learning, behavioral psychology, they say learning is a process of acquiring knowledge, skills, and positive attitude, which ultimately will result in permanent change in behavior. In behavior. So whatever you're doing, whatever course you're taking, whichever school you're learning, at the end of the day, you should remember, you need to balance yourself. You take care of the IQ, you take care of the EQ, and you take care of the PQ. At the end of the day, you become a holistic individual. You become an individual who is exposed to the blended curriculum which is more suitable for us as Muslims. And that is the curriculum which provides experiences that will ultimately make us live in this world in a very functional way and bless us with the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so that we enter Jannah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant all of us Jannah. And that's why the scholars of Islam in education, they say in Islam, education is categorized into two. Ulumul aqliyah wa ulumul ruhiyah. The knowledge that is as a result of scientific exploration of humanity, which is supposed to be fard al-kifaya, and the knowledge which is revealed directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is fard al-ain, personally obligatory knowledge. At the end of the day, therefore, as we endeavor in providing educational experiences to our ummah, we need to make sure that education is balanced. It is balanced in such a way that we give preference to fard al-ain and then followed by fard al-kifaya. We give preference to our children understanding their deen first, and then understanding that they need also to become doctors. They also need to become engineers. They also need to become pilots. But understanding your deen first. Understanding who created you first. And then now understanding Einstein and understanding Aristotle later. But at the end of the day, when you blend those two, you become more effective. Again, number 4, brothers and sisters, is imparting positive skills and attitudes so as to contribute meaningful to the development of the community. The best among you is the one who is most useful to his community. You are the best community you Muslim ever raised. The hadith didn't say you are the best individual. You are the best community. Why? Because you advise each other. You guide each other, you support each other in knowing what is right and what is wrong. That's why you're the best. You are the best because you take time. You invest efforts to make sure your community is purified from every interpolation and every indoctrination which is negative. And the generations are prepared carefully so that they become better and better generations in the future. Again, sustaining and spreading the teachings of Islam. The best among you is the one who learns the Quran and then teaches it to other people. The best among you is the one who is educated, and from his education other people benefit and they learn from him, becomes the source. The whole world is cursed. And among the people who are not cursed in this world are those who are teaching and those who are learning. It's beautiful. That if you don't want to be in that category of cursed individuals, then make sure you are either teaching or you're learning. Because that is the only thing. Believe me, my brothers and sisters, there is no nation in this world. There is no community in this world. There is no family in this world. And there is no individual in this world who is developed holistically without education. It is the only language that each and every one of us can easily speak, no matter what cultural orientation you come from. It's the only thing that ultimately will make the son, the daughter of a poor man, of a peasant farmer, become a CEO of a multinational company. It's the only thing that ultimately brings and breaks all the barriers that are cultural, that are ethnical, that are religious, that is caused by education. So it's very important for us to understand that at the end of the day we have an obligation as an ummah to make sure that the education that we are providing to our younger generation is the education that will make them doctors, that will help a poor woman who wants to put to bed, but she doesn't have deposits to give. It is the education that will make that lawyer who knows very well that this old man is going to lose his land if there's no one to defend him and he has no money to pay. It is that education that will make you ultimately realize you are a nurse and someone is really in pain but has no money to deposit, but you still treat that person. That is the education that is called Islamic education, that gives you a moral and communal obligation that you are learning not because you want to become a selfish individual. You are learning because you want to become a useful individual to your society, to your community, and to the entire ummah. And that's the meaning of education at the end of the day. It's not the diploma disease that each and every one of us today is struggling to acquire. It's not that disease. It is that healing that you get, and then ultimately you want to spread happiness throughout the world and make everyone feel comfortable around you. And wherever you are, you become useful to whoever is closer and far away from you. The next objective is sustaining and spreading the teachings of Islam. Doing da'wah. Ballighu anni walau ayah. It doesn't mean you have to be a scholar to do da'wah. That means wherever you are as a Muslim, as an educated Muslim, you must strive, you must struggle to spread the message of Islam. If you're a doctor, you spread it in the hospital. If you're a teacher in the school, if you're a community leader in the community, if you're an imam in the mosque, if you're a pilot in the aeroplane, wherever you are, as an educated person, as an educated Muslim, the objective is for you to spread the teachings of Islam. Show the beauty of our deen to each and every person. The next objective is inculcating the spirit of peaceful coexistence. We cannot avoid living with other people. But then it is important that as we live with these other people who are not us, we must live with them according to the teachings and the principle and the practices of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Lakum dinukum waliyadin. La ikraha fi din. There's no compulsion in religion. And they remain with their religion and we remain with our religion. But let's live together and develop this nation together. Let's live together and develop this world together. Let's live together and support each other so that at the end of the day, that important paramount spirit of living together known as peace prevails. Because we cannot develop if there is no peace. And I'm sure each and every one of us today, we understand that if there is any religion that is built on the principle of peaceful coexistence, then it's the religion of Islam. But then we as Muslims, we have an obligation. And the obligation is to make sure that as we get educated, we become people who can live peacefully with other people. And we support one another and each other for the benefit and the development of humanity. The next objective, my dear brothers and sisters, is satisfying the intellectual curiosity in line with Islamic teachings. Intellectual curiosity. You got to admire it, to desire it. You got to desire it, to acquire it. You have to acquire it, you have to admire it, desire it, aspire for it, and then finally acquire it. You cannot look for something which you have not seen. You cannot want something which you've never seen. You can never want something you have never dreamt of. So at the end of the day, we got to be curious, trying to find solutions to every challenge that is facing us in a very scientific, technical, and professional way, so that at the end of the day, we meet with the competencies of the 21st century. The modern and contemporary educationists are saying, for the education of the 21st century to be education, it must have 4 C's. For the education of 21st century to become education, it must have 4 C's. The first C is the C of enabling the student to acquire critical ways of thinking. هل يتفكرون؟ هل يتذكرون? Don't you think? Don't you reason? Don't you to reflect? Critical thinking. Making our students, making our young people learn how to think is a 21st century paradigm of education. The second C of the 21st century education is the C of creativity. Not looking for employment, but learning to create employment. Not looking to serve others, but looking for ways of others serving you. Not looking for you to earn money, but looking for ways of generating money. Creativity, the highest level of intelligence, that must be embedded within the curriculum of the 21st century. The third C is collaboration. No one can ever live alone in the world we are in today. Every dream requires a team for it to reach its dream. Teamwork works. At the end of the day, therefore, that education should provide us with collaborative techniques, mechanisms, ways, means of how we can take advantage, of how we can work together, of how we can come together. وَاقْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. That principle must be embedded in education, the collaboration. And the fourth C, learning to communicate. Communication. So when you look at the 4 C's of education in the 21st century, and you look at the objectives of Islamic education, I want to agree that there is a very strong connection between the two principles that are within the educational fraternity. And the last objective, my brothers and sisters, in the interest of time, is imparting skills that enables individuals cope with the challenges of changing world while maintaining their Islamic heritage. Facing the challenges of the global menace, the global pressure, but still maintain your Islamic heritage. My dear brothers and sisters, though this is what is education in Islam, in our society today, we have so many challenges that you and me need to take keen interest, focus on them, so that we can minimize whatever pitfalls that are within our educational system. And one of these things is the curriculum, dualism of curriculum. What do we do with this? so that at the end of the day, our children are getting the right holistic curriculum. Dualism curriculum is going to school and then going to madrasa. Islam and secular education. And therefore, the whole thing is built on Confucianism. Number 2 is habit and character of feeling inferiority, which in most cases, the conflict between those who are learned through the Islamic system of education, the madrasa system, and those who are learned through the Western and the school system, and then at the end of the day, each group thinking I am better than the other. Now that is a challenge for us. How do we build that gap so that the madrasa and the school and those who graduate from the madrasa system and the kuliya and those who are graduating from the university at the end of the day have the same competitiveness. And they look at each other as brothers in Islam. And they look at each other as a supplementing force that can make our ummah a beautiful ummah. The third challenge, my dear sisters, brothers and sisters, is the challenge of bookish education, which is, according to research, is one of the contributing factor on the indiscipline we see in our schools. That our children look at learning as a business of reading books, period, and passing exam. Nothing, no less. It's not a business of respecting the teacher. It's not the business of respecting the parent, and it's not the business of respecting the community, but the business of reading the book, passing the exam, getting a good job, and driving a good car, and owning a good house, period. No character, no morals. It's a challenge that we really need to think seriously. Limitation and loyalty. Limitation in terms of understanding which areas are flooded and which areas requires input. And without a fear of contradiction and intimidation, we have a problem with teaching profession as Muslims. Something needs to be done seriously. A very radical surgery in terms of making our children fall in love with teaching, so that we do not become victims of circumstances every time. And we do not become victims and influence of other people's traits and thinking. It's beautiful. Believe me, it's beautiful. It's beyond any philosophical definition in education when a Muslim teaches a Muslim. Because education doesn't end with what we say. Education is to do with you, the whole you as a teacher. Your mannerism, your dressing, your character, your attitude, your attributes, all that you carry to the class. Now, if we Muslims don't have our own teachers, it's not bad to be taught by other people, but then you should also think, what influence do those people bring into the class? Apart from the subject they're teaching, what other influence do they bring in the class? And then what is this going to impart on our children? That is really a crisis for us. In fact, it should be declared as a state of emergency in the Muslim Ummah. We must produce our own teachers. We must. You know, sometimes some of us who run schools, and you're busy looking for a Muslim principal, and it's like you're looking for diamond. And you're busy looking for a mathematics Muslim teacher, you're looking for gold. Very difficult to get one. And if you get one, you might end up regretting why you even got him. Why the ethics of teaching and learning, the desire to teach and learn, those who are there are teachers by mistake. They're not teachers by choice. And therefore, the passion of teaching is not there. So this is a crisis in our education as Muslims, particularly in Kenya and everywhere, unfortunately. We as Muslims hate teaching. And if we hate teaching, education is about the book, the school, the teacher, and the student. If one angle is missing, how can we provide Islamic education? How? One, the most fundamental angle is missing, the source. The murabbi, the one who will build the character, is not there. Now you find even in our own girls' schools, the models, the characters, the role models are not there. Now this is a crisis. You and me need to think very seriously and see what should we do to make sure we get as many teachers as possible from our communities. And then the next problem is association and accommodation, in terms of you as a Muslim parent being in a dilemma between choosing between Alliance Girls, Precious Blood, and Nairobi Muslim Academy, and Wami Girls High School, and Tawhid Girls High School. Where do I take my child to? Okay, now let us see how many A's were there in Alliance Precious Blood. Oh, it has more A's than Nairobi Muslim Academy, than Tawhid Girls High School. That is where the probability of my girl getting more A's lies. Then you take your child knowing that the environment there is not Islamic. The environment there does not suit Islamic culture, Islamic values, and Islamic principle. And then you say, I can compromise 4 years for my girl not to wear hijab. But what I want is an A, because I have a dream for my girl to become a medical doctor. And this dream can only be fulfilled by by Alliance Girls High School. Now you're not thinking about the true objective of education in Islam. You are looking at the bookish education, the diploma disease, the education that is not built within the principle. This is really a big challenge. Our schools will not be good schools if we are sending our students to other schools. Our best brains are going to other schools. Now, how do you expect our schools to reach that level where we can call them really competitive, more than national schools? We have to take our children to our own schools, so that those brains can make. Schools are made by the learners, the students, the quality, the entry behavior, and the teachers, and whatever is there. At the end of the day, you will reach where others are. And at the end of the day, we will be proud of our schools that, yes. But if all the entire cream of the Muslim society goes to other schools which are not ours, and then those who are left will keep on struggling, whoever will get the share of whoever is there, and then at the end of the day, how do you compare? How do you determine the performance? So that's really a challenge you and me need to think so much. The excitement and the enthusiasm. My dear brothers and sisters, you will all agree with me. These days, if you're a parent, or if you're like me, a teacher, or if you are like me, someone who is running a school, when you are in school, it's like you who is learning, not the student. It's like you who wants the performance, not the students. It is like you who is in the class, not the student. The excitement, the enthusiasm. And one of the things that will ultimately lead to the downfall of this ummah is the disappearing desire for learning among our young people. The curiosity, the excitement of learning. That thing is going away very, very fast. And if we do not take a deliberate, a determinant effort to come up with the intervention, we'll have a big problem. And finally, the standards and the societal expectation need to be considered. There, what is the recommendation, my dear brothers and sisters? We need to struggle the way we have started in establishing our own Islamic institution, but then make sure they have the quality, because we are not competing with ourselves. We are competing with other people. Whether we want to succeed or not, other people are succeeding. Whether we want to learn or not, other people are learning. Whether we are growing or not, other people are growing. Whether we are establishing learning institutions or not, other people are, we cannot stop them. Therefore, we have to meet the pace that will give us that strength to be at the competitive level with other people when it comes to education. Insisting of strict adherence to the educational policies of this country. Because thank God, the Constitution and the policies of education in this country are not discriminating against Muslims. But now the implementers of those policies are making their own interpretation. And therefore, sometimes it affects our children negatively. We need to stand up and say, no. If the policy says you cannot discriminate between the attire of a Muslim student and another, you have to, whether it is this school or that school, this is in a constitution, respecting other people's faith, cultures, tradition. We have to. If you have a population of Muslim, there has to be a place. Those policies must be reinforced so that our children are not disadvantaged when it comes to the tarbiyah, when it comes to ta'deeb, even if they are in other learning institutions. Dear brothers and sisters, we need to change the narrative of motivating our children to learn. A colleague of mine at the university was asking me, Brother Mujahid, you are always talking to the students. What do you tell them? For us, our parents were telling us, you want to get away from poverty? Study. You want to eat pishori? Study. You want to eat biryani? Study. But now our children are eating everything. What do we tell them? They're driving in big cars. They're being taken to school. Driving, you and me, we walked. Now we have to change the narrative. If we want to motivate, my dear brothers and sisters, the motivation narrative has to change. And for the motivation to become a motivation, people must understand the meaning of why they're doing what they're doing. For the motivation to become a motivation, people must establish a very strong optimistic level. For motivation to become true motivation, it has to be in line with time and changing trends of events. For a motivation to become motivation, it has to be inspirational and built on the interest of the person. For a motivation to become motivation, the values and value verification yardstick must be considered. For motivation to become motivation, the objectives of what you do must be clearly stated. For motivation to become motivation, we have to become positive more than negative. So the narrative of motivation, of motivating our children to learn, must shift. Strong paradigm shift. The way you and me, we were motivated to learn, is not the same way you can motivate the younger generation to learn. The next recommendation is social marketing of our Islamic civilization, so that our children can learn the superiority of this civilization. Wallahi, it's very interesting when you read research and you discover the reason why there is a strong crisis among our young people is the elements that makes them. We don't have time to go to that. It is the environment they find themselves in. It is the technology that they are exposed to. And it is the associations and interactions that they are connected to every day. I like this, and I enjoy repeating this every time. The theory of success is built on observation, imitation, repetition, and habituation. And unless we take our children to realize that this is what they need to do in order for them to succeed, we might have a very strong problem in terms of maintaining and sustaining our own identity and our own cultural values and civilizational ways of doing things. Embrace readily research in terms of understanding how can we influence the proper cultural values of our school so that we have good school cultures in our institution. Create regular forums of interaction for our younger people, particularly students who are in school and at the university, so that they can learn from each other and they can have that platform of interaction and they can form a very good circle of association, because you become who you connect with in life. Your network is your net worth. We need to provide our young people with the right network for them to flourish within the Islamic principles and values. Recognitions of Muslim personalities as role model to satisfy the heroic redemption, which is a disease that many people suffer from the age of 13 to 19. Heroic redemption. Now this heroic redemption, we have to make a deliberate attempt of glorifying some prominent, some tangible individuals who have made a huge impact in our society, so that our younger people can be able to have someone to look up to as a role model, instead of looking up to Messi and Ronaldinho and the others. Need to give preference to both academic and character building, that is to say, combine cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains of learning. Make sure we do regular encouragement and reinforcement of learning in our institution, and our children are able to move according to the way we want them to move and become who they become. I'm concluding my talk, brothers and sisters, with 10 C's. For us to move forward with our education, the 10 C's might be of great help. C number 1, we must have a clear clarity, and that is the vision. Clarity must be clear. Why are we focusing on education? Number 2, competencies. That means shifting for excellency and continuous learning, getting the right manpower and the right people to run our institution. Number 3, concentration. That means setting of priorities on the kind of areas we need to focus more than others because of the need. Sometimes careers are selected based on the need of the society. Number 4, common sense, understanding that there are certain things you don't need an explanation, they're very out clear. There are zebra cross mentality, black and white. Therefore, we need to use common sense and say this is right and this is wrong. Number 6, consideration, understanding that our relationships must be harmonious, must be well coordinated so that our children can be able to grow with more warmth and trusting in terms of relationship. Number 8, our commitments must be more committal in terms of education so that we can be able to solve this menace that is affecting our entire Muslim Ummah in this country and globally. Courage, we need courage. And this is very important. And courage comes only through choice, the choice that you make. Courage comes through unleashing, bringing out that strength which you have. Courage comes as a result of knowing, being an open-minded person. Courage comes as a result of reasoning and using relational capital. Courage comes as a result of higher aspiration, thinking big, aiming at the moon, and ultimately, even if you don't touch the moon, you might land on the stars. Courage means always indulging in gauging our strengths and our weaknesses so that we can put a balance and knowing how we are flowing. And then courage means enlightening and empowering ourselves so that we become the society we want to become. My dear brothers and sisters, they say, those who are learned more than you and me, knowledge without action is insanity, and action without knowledge is vanity. Thank you very much. May God bless you.